Hi everyone, this is Miss Branham. I am the social studies teacher for the team Strike the Gold. I'm going to be doing your lesson today. If you are watching this and you're on the A-Day schedule, then you will be getting the lesson on September 1st. If you're on the B-Day schedule, then you'll be getting it on September 2nd. But today's going to be a little bit different lesson-wise. We're going to kind of carry on this conversation of how historians study the past. I know yesterday you looked at timelines and dates and how we kind of know when things happened. And today we're going to look at how historians study sources and things like that to know exactly what happened or how people use different things. This is just a quick reminder that you need both the information from these slides, the video, and your admintum things in order to be successful on your assessments, whether it's the formative or the summative. Information from all of these things can show up on any of those kinds of assessments. So we're going to start off. We're going to be talking about historical sources and what they are. Historians have this really hard job of trying to find out information about what life was like in the past. And while some of the past still has some people who are alive, there's a lot of past history that we can't just contact somebody or look up things on social media and stuff to learn about what happened during an event. There's no one alive from ancient Egypt today that they could just contact to say, hey, what was it like when you built the pyramids? There's no way to do that. So historians have to rely on sources in order to really know what things were like and how things were used. They look at them, they collect them, and they analyze them. So analyzing, you'll see that word a lot, but just in case you don't know what that means, analyze means to break down. So you look at all the different parts and you try and figure out how things go together or why things were included. So they look at these sources, they collect them, they read through them, they work with them, and then they analyze them to see what all goes into it and how they can use those sources to understand the past. The two types of sources that there are going to be primary sources and secondary sources. And you might have seen these before in elementary school with your social studies class or even in your language arts lessons, but we're going to go over them super quick. So a primary source is anything made or written during a specific time period that is an original. So if it's a written document and something that someone wrote as an eyewitness, they were a part of something, they are showing you exactly what life was like during that time. If it's a physical object, it's something that was made during that time. And these are very important because they are our direct links to the past. And it really helps you answer questions like why things were made, how they were made, what that shows, what kind of resources, all of those different things. So when you look at a source like this piece of fabric over here, this is a primary source. It's from ancient Egypt. It's a piece of fabric, and it can help a historian answer questions like what types of techniques the different people use to put their fabrics together, the different materials they had to make their fabric, the different plants they had available to make the different dyes, and all of those different things help a historian really understand not just the fact that they had fabric, but all the different parts of their culture and their resources that go into making the fabric. So there are different types of primary sources. You have letters and things that were written. Again, these are firsthand accounts about something that happened or just about life in general. It's giving you that firsthand account of what's going on. You have business records and other government documents that help historians understand the laws and things from that time. And those are all dated and or at least have a time period that we can put them with that let us know like how government officials led things or how different things like trade happened. And then you have artifacts. So artifacts are primary sources that are not written documents. Yes, it might be a tablet that has writing on it, but the artifact would be that physical tablet. So primary sources are not just things that are written. They can be things that are more of a physical object. And if it is a physical object, then that means it is an artifact. Different examples include things like architecture. So the pyramids would be an actual artifact. cave paintings, like the picture on this slide. They are artifacts, different pieces of pottery, which would be like an everyday tool. Different things that they use that were physical that show us how they lived and what they used it for would be an amazing primary source and an artifact. And it really just helps us see more of what they used instead of just necessarily reading someone's diary entry that said that they went and collected water with a pot. It'd be nice to see the actual pot. So primary sources, again, help us answer the big questions, the who, what, when, where, why kind of questions. It helps us see when sources were made, what time periods they go into, what they were used for, who used them. It tells us all about the society and the people that helped create these things. Secondary sources are collections of information. They are not firsthand accounts. It is not something that was written by someone who witnessed the event or was a part of the event. It is a collection of this information. It summarizes things. It can be about the past or just be like a textbook or a dictionary that is about just all of the information together. Historians do use secondary sources. They look at them to see what other people have collected, but they sometimes don't necessarily rely on them because there's always the factor of them being trustworthy or just relevant. It might include a lot of information that a historian doesn't need. Some different types of secondary sources are books, your textbook, if you have like any kind of textbook for any class, movies, films, artwork, if it is made about the past. So if you paint a picture of a pyramid, that would be a secondary source because you were not there when the pyramid was created, things like that. Newspapers and news articles, videos, anything that has to do with the news, unless it is a live segment, it is not a primary source. So unless it is a video where you are talking to an eyewitness or it is showing an eyewitness account, like it is live showing an event, it is not a primary source because the person who was reporting it and talking about it was not there when it really happened. So we need to know about sources because it helps us understand the past. Like I said a few minutes ago, it helps us answer those big questions, and that's what historians use them for, to answer the questions about what happened, why did it happen, who was involved, and all of those big things, and how that led up to where we are today. And it also goes with, I know it's very cliche and we hear it all the time, but it's still kind of accurate. History repeats itself. And if we understand the sources and understand history and why things happened and how it happened, it can help us in our present day know where we are and why we got to where we are and maybe avoid some of the past things from happening again. So the next section, really quick, is about evaluating and interpreting sources. So what historians do once they have the sources that they need and how they, again, analyze them and break them down. So they have to be really careful when they're interpreting sources. They have to make sure it's credible. They have to make sure it's reliable and authentic. So they have to make sure it's real. They have to make sure it's trustworthy. Otherwise, they could end up telling the wrong information or writing a book and stuff in the book would be wrong. They want to make sure what they share is accurate, and they have to make sure that the sources they use are accurate. Otherwise, they don't need to be using them. They also need to be aware of bias. So bias is present in everything. Everybody has a bias, and that's not a bad thing. I do want to reiterate, bias is not a bad thing, but it's something that historians have to be aware of because a bias is a preference for or against. So it's either for something or against something, and it can be for or against a person, a group, an idea, a belief, any of these things. And a historian has to be aware of that because when they are looking at the information, they have to be aware of what that person's bias is. So an example of a positive, like a for bias, would be maybe somebody lives in an area where the most common meat is fish. They might have a bias where they believe that fish is the best food because that's pretty much all that they've ever eaten. So that's what they think is the best. And that's not a bad thing, but that's just their bias. And a historian has to be aware of this bias so that when they are using the source where this person is saying that the fish is the best, they have to have a better understanding of why they're saying that. They can't just then put in their book, oh, this person said fish is the best. They need to explain why that person believes that. And it helps a historian understand how biases are present also because of what kinds of things are available to people. They also have to be aware of their own bias because historians are supposed to remain neutral when they are writing and recording history. And they need to know where their own biases are so they can try to eliminate them so they show all sides of the story. And the last thing is that historians, like most people, need help sometimes. They sometimes work with different artifacts or sources or in areas of the world that they're not necessarily well-versed in. They don't necessarily know everything about it. So they reach out to people who do. There are other people like anthropologists and archaeologists, librarians, whose jobs are to maybe be a professional and focus and specialize in a specific area of the world. And they might know a little more than the historian. So the historian can go to them and get some help. So just like us, when we need help with our work, historians need the same help with their sources as well. So you've already completed step 1, which was to watch today's mini lesson. I know we went through some of the slides fast, or there was some information on some of them that we didn't read word for word of. You will have access to these slides. But your next step is go to Edmentum. It's linked in your assignment for today. You're going to be doing slides 38 through 50. And then once you complete that, you are going to be doing the Discovering the Ancient Past Mastery test. This is your first formative. You need to make sure that you are focused when you watch the video, when you go back over the slides, when you do the Edmentum, so that way when you do your formative, you're prepared. And just again, the mini lessons and the Edmentum readings are going to have information that can show up on the formatives and summatives. So it's really important that you pay attention to all of these things. But otherwise, this is the end of your lesson, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. Bye.